have an opportunity this morning to celebrate two folks from our church, Christine and Isabel. A few weeks ago, made the trip to Honduras, and the church, we prayed for them and we commissioned them and sent them out to share the gospel, and so now they've come home to share with us this morning. So I'm going to turn it over to them. They've got a few videos they want you to see, and they want to just share their experience that they had serving the Lord there in Honduras, okay?
Alrighty, good morning. My notes here real quick. First of all, I just want to thank you guys because this journey in some ways started several years ago in 2020, actually, because if you recall, during the pandemic time, there was a church, Peniel, Iglesia Bautista de Peniel, the Baptist Church of Peniel in Choluteca, was a church that my parents had worked with when we were serving as missionaries over there when I was younger. And it was just amazing to see how God had started orchestrating how to help them in their time of need. We had our needs and different things that needed to be met on this side, in this country, and then they had needs that needed to be met there as well. And theirs looked a bit different. A lot of them, just the poverty there is still pretty prevalent in a lot of areas, as you'll see in some of the pictures and videos that we're going to be showing. So for them, it was, well, everywhere I know in the world was hard with jobs. I know people had lost jobs. It was hard to find jobs during that time. So with them in their circumstances, if y'all recall, the church was felt led to help out with donations, and that was a monetary donation that turned into food, so to speak. We sent it via Western Union, and the lady from Peniel Church that I was in communication with, Marlene Chirino, was able to receive that on her end, and then she used it to purchase food that went towards the families of the church in Peniel during that hard time in their life. And so you're going to see a video clip here too that is very special. But that's where our heart has been for a long time, honestly, since I was a little kid. As I mentioned, my parents were missionaries there, and so I got to know these people for many years. And then the next generation has come, and that's something I want to talk about. I thought she was going to be standing by me this whole time, but that's okay. I will be here. Anyway, alrighty. So going to our trip that we just had, it was something that had been that had started when we were in communication with the church. It's taken a few years, but something that was begun when my parents were there many years ago was called the Promise Center. And this Promise Center was established in the south in Choluteca, where we went to serve on this mission trip. And the purpose of this center the vision was to have a place where pastors could come and have meetings, to be able to encourage each other, to be able to have kind of like conferences where they could learn and then use those tools to go back to their churches and strengthen their congregations and different things like that. Over the years, however, it's been a blessing. They've, I think, had a wedding there at the center since then. And sadly, I think during COVID time, it actually served also for a funeral location. But the building itself has been just a huge blessing for them to have a central point for people to come to. And so through this Promise Center, we were wanting to be able to this team go out and minister in different capacities. We had, as Miss Isabel will talk about the women's ministry that she was able to help lead and teach. I helped with the children's ministry. We had some other people that from 3 churches total that went on the trip. And from Salem Baptist, we had a couple that helped with the agricultural. They planted some plants and showed the women how to do like planting in pots and everything. So that was neat. We had that. And then my dad helped with a pastor's group that you'll see also. And he just had essentially like a small conference with them where he gave them tools and even a hard drive with some notes and things that they could then use and take and go back to their churches to use. So I'm going to back up to the beginning of our trip. As some of you know, and most of you, as it was laid out for when we were to leave and arrive in Honduras, God has his timing, and his plans are perfect, and they're not always how we envision them, how they should go. As you know, that was during the week of the ice storm. So if you recall, a lot of kids were out of school, and that created a domino effect. So we were intended to go from Memphis to Houston to Honduras in one day, in about 12 hours time from when we wake up to when we arrive. To sum up, the trip took 5 airports, 4 countries, and 57 hours for our arrival in Honduras. Again, God has his reasons for why we did not show up that Tuesday. We showed up late Wednesday night. We ended up going from Memphis to Houston, to Guatemala, to El Salvador, and then to Honduras. So it was very trying, but it was neat in that, first of all, I have no doubt that people on every airplane needed to have the talk that they had with the members that we sat by. You guys, anywhere we are, we're missionaries, and I wholeheartedly believe that. The location changes sometimes. It's going to change whether you're talking to your neighbor or whether you're in the grocery store. In this situation, we were in airports. We had people to talk to there. We had people beside us on the airplanes. And eventually, our goal was to be in Honduras, and we talked to the people in Honduras. But we have to get in the mindset of we are missionaries everywhere we go. And so that's what we did. We used that journey to talk to people that we could talk to. But also it was a neat opportunity for us to depend solely on the Lord. When we arrived in Honduras, it was about 10 p.m. We had a 3-hour drive from there to our hotel. So we arrived about 2 a.m. or so. I can't do the math right now, but all to say, most of us did not get to sleep until about 3 or 4, and we had to get back up again around 6 to be prepared for our first ministry and just hit the ground running. And that was overwhelming, I'm not going to lie. When I got to our first location, which was the church, and it started filling up with kids. Some of them were already there waiting for us. I was overwhelmed. I started to have a little panic attack because I was tired, and I'm like, Lord, how do I teach these kids? Well, with little sleep, with the stress that we had just kind of gone through of going through the airports and everything. And it was neat to be able to just truly rely on him. Like the song was saying this morning, my God, I need you. I need you right now. That's literally, that was my song to him. That was my prayer to him. I want to say what you want me to say, nothing more, nothing less. And so it was neat to rely on him in that moment. And so we had a good time. Each church that we went to with the kids portion that I did, Thursday we went to one church, and then Friday we went to another in the morning time. And what I taught the kids was from 2 Corinthians 5:17. I had actually talked to Brother Stephen before we left and told him how just timely and confirming that was his message, because he was talking about 2 Corinthians 5, if you recall, right before we left. And so that just confirmed what I was about to teach the kids. And it's specifically verse 17, which says, I keep losing everything. That's funny. Alrighty, it says 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has gone, the new has come. And as simple or as short, I guess, as that verse is, there was so much to unpack with these kids. I had taken a Spanish version of the book, The Hungry Caterpillar, if y'all recall that from your childhood. I love that book, and the little holes that were in each of the pages and stuff. And I walked them through that book. I read it to them, and I explained to them how the reason I love the butterfly, I would ask them, first of all, how was it created? How does the butterfly, how is it born? And is it born as a butterfly? And they're like, no. And so they would explain that it's a caterpillar, and then it goes into the chrysalis, and then it comes out a butterfly. And it's a completely new creation. And that my point to them was, when we are in Christ, when we give our life to Him, our life looks like one thing prior to knowing Him. But when we let Him encompass us, like we're in Him completely, and we trust Him and give our life to Him, then He makes us into a new creation. And so that was neat for them to be able to have that illustration, because I love that even when Jesus was on earth, He used His creation to give us examples. I like to be able to see and understand and relate to things. And so for me, it's just, I love how Jesus did that. And so He still does that today. So the butterfly was just something that I was able to share with them. And then they did a craft and made butterflies, and that was really fun too. I got to do that also on Friday evening. The kids were in the mornings, and then Friday evening I had a chance to share this with the youth, and we did that as well. And that was a little bit different setting. We had worship time beforehand, and that was precious because they sang some songs that we recognized in English. And so they had the team come up and sing Shout to the Lord. They sang in Spanish and we sang in English, and it was just a beautiful, beautiful time. And then after that, I gave the presentation on a more youth level about the butterfly. But afterwards, when they did the craft, it was so fun to just see all of them working together and laughing. And I personally thought that would be an awesome thing that we could start doing after church services, is start having craft time. But I don't know, maybe we could talk about that later. But no, it was really neat, just very awesome fellowship together. So the Saturday, though, after the youth evening, Saturday was our time to go out and evangelize. And some of the youth that had been there the Friday before, they had actually come to help with interpretation because they had been going to English school and they were learning English, and this gave them an opportunity to practice their English. And so they came Saturday morning, and we practiced testimonies. The team members that did not speak Spanish would share in English, and then they would interpret it into Spanish. And they were practicing that for that when we went door to door. That would be their ministry opportunity. And so that was really amazing to see these youth getting involved as well, and helping interpret for the members. So that was really special on Saturday, being able to go out and evangelize. And that was pretty much the portion of what I helped with the team. I think Isabel's going to come and share with the women and what she did with them. So here's Isabel.
Thank you. I want to echo her thanks. In all realities, it was already difficult before we started. It was difficult for me. The reason being was I was going as a missionary, but I was actually going as a translator. So I had to prepare myself differently as far as what my job was going to be. So it was very hard. I prepared the women with booklets, because we were going to do the Book of Ruth. We had already been talking about it. What was it that I wanted to do? And I said, Lord, tell me what I need to do. And He said, do the Book of Ruth. When I started with that, there was I want to say about 100 different ideas, because I love the Book of Ruth, but I wanted them to have tangible things that they could use for their mission. We did not know that these ladies were all saved. We did not know that. We didn't even have an inkling of what we were going to receive as far as the ladies that were coming. We found out that they were all Christian women from different churches. Excuse me. And one of the things about this was, when I started with the Book of Ruth, I said, okay, tangibility. Yeah, we got to narrow it down, Lord. Aprons was the first thing that I came back with. And the reason for the aprons was, excuse me, was because when Ruth starts up and they're walking, I said, flashlights. They need flashlights. Women are not supposed to walk by themselves at this point. So the flashlights were something that we brought up. I got to step away from that. And the other thing was, the reason why I wanted them to have aprons was because they had to pick up that wheat and barley. So these ladies had to learn something. When they started to question, and I asked them, I need questions, remarks, anything that you want to say. They started up real quick. Why an apron? I said, well, how are you going to pick up the wheat and barley? Your dress? Think about it. Way back when, you need something. So they're like, oh, we never thought about it. And then I was sitting with my mother-in-law, and I said, we were at the meeting, and I said, we need perfume. We need something. So we got some oils. I had my daughter mix some up for me. We got them cute little containers, brushes, hair, toothbrush. These were the things that we took for these women. And let me tell you that these women never looked at the book of Ruth any more different than we did. But their eyes were opened when there were little objects handed to them and relating to what it meant for them to be cleansed. You know, when Naomi turns around and tells Ruth to go take a bath, to wash herself, perfume herself before she goes to lay at his feet. So these ladies were like, is that what it means? And I said, well, one of the things that I wanted them to start with was Jesus Christ came and he says for us to love one another. And I asked them, how many of you love your mother-in-laws? And I asked them, how many of you, they all raised their hands. And I said, how many of you like your mother-in-law? And they all looked at me like, isn't it the same thing? And I said, no, it's not the same thing. How many of you like your mother-in-law? And they all just smiled at me. And I said, well, come on. I said, you know, when God tells us to love one another, we're going to have to be around that person if we love them. We're going to learn to like them. Whether we want to or not, we're going to learn to like them. Why? Because God calls us to love them. And when we love someone, we're going to want to be around them. We're going to want to talk to them. So we learn to like them. And some of the lady says, well, we have to live with them anyway. And that was hilarious to me because I said, why? Well, because you have to live with your in-laws once. And I said, okay, I go back to scripture. When one dies, the eldest child takes care of the one that's left behind, whether it's daddy or mommy. So that was the one thing that I learned from them as they learned from us. But at the end result was how appreciative they were of everything. Let me tell you guys, I did not finish sewing all those aprons that I was trying so hard to do. I fell and I fell again. So at that point, I'm like, nope, can't finish them. They said, you know what is so cool about this? And so wonderful about this is we get to finish a project that you started, that you brought to us. That made me feel like, wow. They were just glad that they could see something that they could keep for themselves, that they could finish off something that was started before. And they were so appreciative of the fact that we went to talk to them, to teach them just a little bit more of what they already knew. And I thought, it's like teaching children. For myself, I was translating what these two women were saying. My job was not to speak for myself. It was to speak for them. And I found out through them, you know, because they prepared everything for me. One was an alcoholic, and the other one had a bad marriage. But they were both grandmas to the same baby, something I did not know. I'd already met these women. I'd already been speaking to them. I'd already had meetings with them, and I did not know this. And it just brought tears to my eyes because I didn't realize that they were that one little boy that I'd been praying about, because I knew he had been sick, that it was grandma to both of them. And then the day that we went out to visit, I went with them. There was a gentleman. We went to his house right off the bat, across the street from the church. And that brought something to me, because I said, how far do I have to go? And I was telling, a rock I can't throw, because of course my arm is no good. But it was, I don't know what it was, it's God appointed. They both spoke. One gave part of her testimony, and she's very afraid to even open her mouth. She's I don't know what to call her. Shy as a grown woman, I don't know. But the other one started, and that's how I realized what she was saying. The gentleman started crying, and he was the only one that was in there. And he says, my entire family is saved except for me. But now I want to be saved, because if God can save her from her alcoholism, he can save me too. And that was the first door we went into. So to me, what I learned from them was a whole lot more than what I thought they could have learned from me. So this trip for me was hard, because I knew what I had to do, but it came back with so many blessings. On Sunday, the video that is going to come up is Marlene. And when I met her, I think 2 days later, I asked her, how did that money actually help you? She's shown us a couple of pictures, but I want to know how. So she says, through this, she's speaking and she's saying, how many of you are here that helped with the time of COVID and that was taking care of us and all this stuff? She said, so she asked Christina to introduce the people that were there. So it was Salem Baptist and ourselves that sent money. And in one of those, when we talked to Jason, he says, well, we can send $500. I said, send it from the missions fund, because at this point, that's what it's for. It's for missions. And he says, well, we can go ahead and send 500. I turned and I looked at my husband, then I looked at my son, and I said, can you help me with tamales? And that doesn't mean go put your hands in there. That means, can you sell some for me? Well, we managed to put together in less than a week $500. So guess what? That was your $500. The food you ate actually helped them. Second time around, that's the same thing that happened. And I'm really proud of our church and everybody else that actually participates in this thing.